All right, we're going to talk about the most fundamental distinction you can make in health and probably in life, and that is your non physical and your physical. These are two aspects of existence of your health, and it's the most fundamental thing to consider because at any point in your health journey, you might be looking at it through one of these lenses and it might it might benefit you, behoove you is what I was going to say. It might behoove you, it's a silly word, but it's fun to say, to look at it through the other lens. So, for example, you're very invested in your physical health and you're counting, maybe all the different types of fats and carbs and, macros or whatever. You're counting, you're measuring things on a really good level and everything seems to be going pretty good or something like that, but you're not experiencing the health that you're looking for. Or you're maybe not making the progress that you thought you would. And, somehow on paper it seems stuck. If you shift your focus at that point into the non-physical, you might understand that there's something happening within you. There's something in your experience that you were not acknowledging because you were too focused on what was happening physically. And, so what is non-physical? This is, it's hard to describe, it's hard to get our heads around it because it is non-physical. And basically it is that dimensions, it's the dimensions, but it's a dimension of existence that is equal to, the infinite, to God, to the unity that is behind, and this cosmic intelligence that is bigger than anything that's happening, individually or at any level, except for the totality, the massive, the big it. Because what's non-physical is sort of like the canvas that reality is painted upon. So it's like what is the background of being and of physical reality. And you might not have an experience of this dimension. It's not necessarily, this is its own spiritual awakening to have an experience of this dimension and be able to sort of touch it with regularity. And you might have an experience of it. But either way, I would say it's important to have both of these tools. If you're out for a walk, you're going to take steps with your right foot and your left foot. And if you're on a health journey, you're going to take steps with your physical foot and your non-physical foot, or your spiritual, nature. And it's important to leave the door open. A lot of us get grounded in that physical, realm, and we really should focus and orient ourselves around that primarily, I would say, because, even there's no way to focus on your spiritual practice without trying to do something physically, or, you can just be, because anything can be a spiritual practice because it permeates everything. So it's really amorphous, and and it's often with beyond our control, and we really can't command divine moments of epiphany. They just happen for us, but we need to leave the door open for them, and we need to make space for them to occur. And I can say that I've hopped on both of these legs rather than walking with a nice smooth stride. And that is why I'm making this video. And I hope it's helpful, and I hope it makes some sense, because, it's really easy to get lost in one or the other. You could just as easily be so invested in your spiritual dimensions that there's disease happening in your body or in your life that you just ignore or spiritually bypass, as they say. Or, you make sense of it through a spiritual lens, but you're not really dealing with it. And the reason, again, I make this video is not just because I've made the mistakes on both sides of that aisle, being overly invested physically, being overly invested spiritually, but because health can be really simple, and it's often a simple fix. There's again, you know, both sides of these aisles are going to convince you, there's going to be people that want to convince you that it's very complicated and there's all these things you have to do and all these supplements you have to take in the physical realm, or there's all these practices you have to do and all these, you know, meditations and sacrifices you have to make spiritually on that side. But sometimes it's as simple as just recognizing, oh, I'm a little bit overinvested here, I'm a little bit overinvested here, and I just have to move a little bit more of my energy in either side, and focus and attention on either side to bring balance back to my life. And it's not necessarily that you're doing anything particularly wrong in either one, except you've just gotten lost in one side. So I hope that that has been helpful. If you liked this video, and if you want to see more, please engage with the channel in some way, and or, you know, subscribe and all that. And if you don't like it, make sure you know, also engage, because I can still use that as feedback. And hopefully we'll see you soon.